Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Blake Scholl. We are thrilled to hear from him and gain insights into the groundbreaking work happening at Boom Supersonic. Blake, the stage is yours. There he is.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for welcoming me here. And I really deeply mean that to everybody in Greensboro. I could not feel more welcome here. The Boom team could not feel more welcome here. And we came to Greensboro because we discovered what all of you already know. This is Boomtown. I'd like to share a little bit of the stories about our journey here to Greensboro. And I'd like to start with a story from when I first met Brent Christensen. It was a few years ago, and we were shopping for the home where we would build the Overture airliner. And there were a lot of options, but a thing that I've deeply believed since the day of founding Boom, that what makes this mission possible is people who have deep passion and deep drive to build the future of flight. And when I first met Brent here a few years ago, he handed me a quote from William Tate. And to me, this is a famous quote, although I think it might actually be quite obscure. When the Wright brothers were shopping for a place to fly their airplane, they wrote to the postmaster at Kitty Hawk and asked about the weather. And William Tate wrote them back and gave them not just a good detail about the happily blustery winds on the Outer Banks, but also said, if you choose to come and try your flying machine here, you'll find a most hospitable community who will do everything to ensure your comfort and your success. And Brent printed that out on a big piece of canvas and then mounted that to a big sheet of carbon fiber that had been laid up by some students at a community college. And I remember thinking, wow, here's a group of people that shares our passion for aviation. And the more I got to know the community and the people and everybody here, the more I felt like we have really found our team here in Greensboro. So please join me in thanking Brent Christensen for being instrumental in getting us to North Carolina. I'd also like to thank Kevin Baker. Visionary airport CEO is not usually a phrase that you can that goes together, but you've got one here in Kevin. And long before we'd even started thinking of where we were going to build Overture, Kevin had started laying the literal groundwork, and he sponsored some infrastructure projects, like already starting to prepare sites at the Piedmont Triad Airport, already making sure the roads and bridges and runways and taxiways were in place. And that work that Kevin did made it possible for us to get here much, much faster than we could have anywhere else. And of course, at Boom, we're all about speed. In fact, because of that groundwork that Kevin did, it took us 18 months, I think, to get the building permits for the Superfactory. And by the way, that was not due to anything in North Carolina, that was federal. And then only 17 months from the building permit to being able to cut the ribbon in June. And that would not have been possible without Kevin Baker and his visionary leadership. So please join me in thanking Kevin. I'd also like to thank Governor Cooper, who worked across the aisle to put together support for Boom at the state level and has continued to be just a great friend, a great champion at the state level and the federal level. Please join me in thanking Governor Cooper. And I'd also like to thank Senator Tillis. Both Senators Tillis and Budd have been fantastic supporters and champions for us at the federal level. Senator Tillis and his staff have been instrumental in making sure that we've received not just great support and recognition here in North Carolina, but also at the federal level. So we are very, very well represented in DC. Thank you. All right, well, before we turn our attention to the future that we're building together here in Greensboro, I'd like you to join me in teleporting 2,000 miles across the country to the Mojave Desert, where, as many of you know, we have been testing the XB-1 supersonic demonstrator. That's the airplane that's the prototype for the Overture airliner that we're going to be building here together. Earlier this week, the XB-1 had its second flight. And in many ways, the second flight is more significant than the first flight. On the first flight, we found probably 9 out of 10 things went great. And there were a couple that we wanted to learn from and adjust. And so Flight 2 is about getting back up in the air, confirming that our engineers have been able to address the stuff we discovered on Flight 1. And we had an amazing Flight 2. Retracted the landing gear in the air for the first time, got it back down for a safe landing, and most importantly, tested out a new digital stability augmentation system that the Boom team developed in record time, got on the airplane, and flew successfully. So what we're going to find from here on out, I think the rest of the XB-1 flight campaign is going to speed up. Looking forward to getting Flight 3 in September and only speeding up from there. And we're still targeting having the first ever independently developed supersonic jet break the sound barrier before the end of the year. So, thank you. I'd like to invite you to join me in Mojave for a moment for a look behind the scenes at Flight 2.
Test control, you are go for brake release.
Fast rotation, good liftoff.
Test control, you are go for gear retraction.
Heavy. Showing 3 up and locked.
Test control copies, looks like a good retraction.
So smooth with the gear up.
Test control, your go roll damper.
I'm happy with what I'm seeing from the dampers so far.
Isn't that cool? I've watched it a billion times. All right, so that's XB-1, and that is really the airplane we built to learn the lessons that we needed to learn to make Overture a success. But let's bring our attention back here to North Carolina. And of course, there's a deep, deep history of amazing things happening in this state. I also grew up in Ohio. And so there's, of course, where was the airplane really invented? And a thing I like to say is this, us Ohioans, we know where to go when it's time to fly. So the Wright brothers started a long history of busting some mythology about flight. They were not the favored team. These were 2 bicycle mechanics who didn't have any formal credentials or resume to say that they should be able to go invent the airplane. And there were much better funded, established competitors that were sort of the hand-picked favorites to invent the airplane, and yet the Wright brothers are the ones that did it. And I think they kicked off a history of busting myths about innovation in flight. And so that's the theme I'd like to have for the rest of the talk today, is busting myths about supersonic flight. So, first off, startup can't build a supersonic jet. I heard this from day 0 when I started the company in my basement. And yet, well, we did. I'm a big believer that small, focused, passionate teams can do things that the big, established players won't or can't do. XB-1 we did with about 50 people. And of course, we're going to need a lot more than that here in Greensboro to scale this up and build many, many Overtures. But it is still, in the grand scheme of things, going to be a small team doing some very big things. airlines won't order it. I often get asked, well, when are airlines going to place orders for Overture? Well, 3 already did. I'm very excited to have United, American Airlines, and Japan Airlines behind us. We have already sold or pre-sold the first 5 years of production here in Greensboro. So we've got a lot of airplanes to build here. And this is just scratching the surface. You know, when you can cross the pond in 3.5 hours on United, BA, Air France, Lufthansa, everyone else is going to be saying, uh-oh, how soon can we get our supersonic jets? And they're all going to come from here, so we're going to need to expand quite a lot. FAA won't cooperate. This is, you know, we all read the headlines about the struggles the big guys are having getting their airplanes approved. And on day 0, everybody told me, like, oh, we're going to have a heck of a time getting through regulatory approvals. And what we found was that if we took a different approach, this just wasn't true. And first off, this is one of the most surprising myths we can bust about supersonic flight. People assume that we must be doing a bunch of things for the first time, and that the airplane's made out of unobtainium, and we're, you know, and therefore it's going to be a nightmare to get it through regulatory approvals. Well, there's something different that's actually true here. Every single technology on Overture is basically pre-approved. We're using materials and techniques and technologies that are already flying on other airplanes today. And additionally, a thing we've learned, you know, the way we've been able to engage here in Greensboro with all of you is also how we're engaging at the federal level with the FAA. We invite everybody to be part of the team that makes safe, sustainable supersonic flight a reality. And so we've been deeply engaged with our friends at the FAA. And we started doing that with the XB-1, where we invited our regulators to come look over our shoulder as we were building the airplane. And when we were at the finish line and we were ready for our certification to fly, the FAA came out and visited us in Mojave, did the inspection, and usually it takes about 90 days from an inspection to achieve certification. They handed us the paperwork the day we asked. And I think this is really a testament to working together, to being transparent, to inviting our regulators to check our homework as we do it, not just show up at the finish line and say, please approve me. So I think we've started a relationship there as we intend to continue it. And our goal in engaging with regulators is not to ask them to do anything that they don't know how to do. Ask them to be our partners in building a safe, reliable airplane that we trust for our friends, family, loved ones, and everyone else to get on. And there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. We welcome it. It's a good thing. But if we do it right, this is not going to be our challenge. We're just going to get the airplane right, and we're going to let those double-checking our work be along our side as we go through that process. It's a niche market. I hear this all the time. And people think back to Concorde, which truly was a niche market. That airplane had 100, actually not very comfortable seats on it, and a $20,000 ticket. And you just can't fill 100 seats at $20,000 a pop, especially not with 1980s, 1990s kind of travel volumes. But I don't know anybody who wants to spend more time on airplanes, right? Everybody wants supersonic flight so long as it's safe and affordable and sustainable. And those are the things that we're focused on. If we deliver that, there are going to be thousands of supersonic airliners. And in fact, just with Overture 1, which as you may know starts out all premium class. So this is first class and business class on Overture 1. And it'll be profitable for our airline friends at about a quarter of what was charged on Concorde. So think more like $5,000 versus $20,000. And even with that price point, which I know is not yet for everybody, there are 700 routes on the planet where airlines are going to be able to fill the seats, make money, and passengers are going to be able to get a big speed up. So 700 profitable routes. And if we turn that to the number of airplanes we're going to have to build here in Greensboro, that's about 1,100 Overtures 1,100 overtures to carry at Mach 1.7 the passengers who are already paying fares like what we're talking about in business class today. And then there's going to be an overture 2 and an overture 3. And our goal is to keep iterating and to bring down the cost of supersonic flight so that one way to think of it is anybody who could afford a smartphone could afford to fly supersonic. And when that happens, the market for supersonic airplanes, I think, is actually going to be much larger than the market for subsonic airplanes. And if you go back and look at history, that's been the history of flight. The market for 707 jetliners was a lot bigger than the market for DC-3 propeller airliners, because when flights are faster, we all travel more. So we have an opportunity here to build together something that will ultimately be bigger than Boeing and Airbus are today, by speeding up travel, enabling more people to go more places more often. Radical new technology. Nope. Nothing new on this airplane. We didn't invent anything. We just put it together. Turbofan engines. This is the same architecture that's been around for about 80 years. Carbon fiber composites. The Overture airframe is sort of like we took a Boeing 787 and we stretched it out. We made it long and skinny, and then we put twice as many engines so it can go twice as fast. That's it. There's an augmented reality vision system for the pilot to see the runway. And XB-1 had the first ever landing of a human-piloted airplane on an augmented reality vision system. But I'll tell you a secret. Gulfstream already did it on the G6. That airplane can land on a vision system when the clouds are blocking the view. Overture, the nose is blocking the view, but either way, it's landing on a vision system. It's been done already. Everywhere you look on the airplane, we've made the pragmatic choice. Mach 1.7. It's because going super fast at 1.7, the temperatures the airplane encounters are actually the same temperatures that the 787 encounters on the ground in the desert on a hot day, soaking in the Middle East. So incredibly pragmatic approach, and the engineers cry when I say it, but we didn't invent anything fundamentally new for Overture 1. And this is what allows us to do what we're doing here. Okay, what about the engine? We famously flirted with the big guys, and then we ultimately decided that we're going to build our own engines, just the same way that SpaceX does. And people called us crazy. But I've come to believe that actually the crazy path was doing it any other way, putting all of our eggs in the basket of a 100-year-old company where we would never be as important to them as they would be to us. And so we started on that engine program about 18 months ago. And 18 months from now, well, hold my beer, we're going to be generating thrust by the end of next year on the core of the Symphony engine. So people say we can't do it. We'll find out pretty soon who's right. Suppliers won't work with us. This was really hard. One of the things that may not be appreciated unless you work in aerospace is getting great suppliers to come and join the team is not actually trivial. Since every part on the airplane is basically custom, it's existing technologies but custom parts. The same materials are on the 787 but a different shape. We need to allocate manufacturing resources. We need to have the best engineers at the suppliers working to design and tool up all those parts. And where we are today is we've picked about 80% of the suppliers for Overture, and these are just the best of the best. And one of the things that I find very emotionally poignant about this is that while we're assembling the airplane right here in Greensboro, the parts for it are coming from all over the world. Last time we tried supersonic, it was a competition between nations. France and Britain with Concorde versus the Concordski in the Soviet Union, and the American competitor that we never actually finished designing. But this time, supersonic's back and it's here to stay, and the airplane that will bring the world closer together is being built by a global team. Honeywell in the US is doing the avionics and the flight deck. Latticor, French company, is doing the wiring both for the airplane and the engine. The wing comes from Air Nova in Spain. The fuselage comes from Leonardo in Italy on the same production line that builds 787 fuselages. The landing gear comes from France. I could keep going. This is truly a global team coming together to make this happen, and all of those parts are coming together here in Greensboro. So, Also, I got told in the early days, no one's going to want to work at a aerospace startup. It's too risky. People only want to work at the big companies. Well, we're still small, but boy, we're mighty. And I am more than anything proud of the team inside the company and the team around the company that's come together to do this. We are just about 200 people today. We're going to keep growing. And some of the stats are just unbelievable. We've got 30 pilots on the team. More than 10% of the company has their pilot's license. 18 have flown inverted. I'm happy I'm one of those now. And the stat that I'm most proud of is 17 people founded a company before they came to work for Boom. This is an incredibly entrepreneurial culture, and that's one of the reasons I think we feel at home here in Greensboro. Many people, some of those 17 actually shut their previous company down in order to come join Boom. All right. Supersonic isn't prioritized by travelers. I heard this a lot. No one would pay extra for speed. Well, we went and talked to passengers. 97% of people who fly international, business, or first class today want supersonic. 3% clicked the wrong button. And the thing that surprised me the most is, I always anticipated that getting there in half the time is something that would cause people to consider whether they wanted to stick with their preferred airline or they would switch. But when we asked them, 87% of passengers would walk away from their status, walk away from their frequent flyer miles, and switch airlines in order to be able to travel twice as quickly. And this is really, really important to our business strategy. So what this means is, by the way, this is why United went first. They figured this out, and they realized if they were first to have supersonic, the passengers from other airlines would switch. And when they switched, they wouldn't just switch their international flying, they'd switch all their domestic flying too. And so what we are at the precipice of creating here is probably one of the greatest competitive shifts in the airline industry that we've seen since the dawn of the jet age. If we look back to that history, the airlines that were visionary to be first to jets had a huge advantage, and then everyone else played catch up. And one of the challenges of building a supersonic airliner is it takes a while. One of the advantages is once we're at that finish line, there's a lot of distance between us and the next competitor. And what that means is that when, I'll just say other airlines, wake up and they say, we need our overtures too, well, they're going to be overture airliners, not supersonic jets from any other company, because that's how far ahead we are. Well, no place to build it? Want to bust that myth? Could not be more excited to be here in Greensboro. And so before I close, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I think, the significance to the country for what we're doing here together. Does anybody know who the #1 US exporter is? It's Boeing. And I think we all read the same headlines. It's really sad. We used to build a product that we were incredibly proud of, that airlines could count on around the world, and we lost our way and went backwards on safety and went backwards on quality. And we are in a real danger that airlines will switch away from brand B. And they'll look to Europe, or worse, they'll look to China for the future of their aircraft. And that is of economic significance. It's also of national security significance, because the technology that goes into commercial airplanes is also much of the same technology that powers military and defense applications. And if we let well, we've seen it here in so many ways. When an industry leaves, I know you all have lived it more than I have, when an industry leaves, it's really hard to come back. We've seen it in textiles. We've seen it in semiconductors. We invented semiconductors in the US, and then we let that go to Asia, and now it's ferociously difficult to bring back. And I believe we're at real risk of that happening with commercial aircraft. And the way to prevent that is to make sure the next generation of products are invented and built here, and keep innovating. Thank you. So So we got a lot of work to do to really deliver on that. And I'm proud to have and grateful to have all of you kind of on our extended team as we do that. But we really, really need to do it as Americans. We need to make sure the next generation of aerospace products are invented here, built here, and we never stop innovating and no one ever gets ahead of America.